Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Policy Development Strategic Direction Committee agenda for Tuesday, March 14th, 23. Attendance has been taken. Note Councilor Bell, Miller, and Garneau are online. Approval of the agenda. Moved by Mr. Mayor, second by Councilor Pierce. I know Councilor Bell has one item, and I've got you marked in here. Thank you, John. All those in favor? Carried. And we got a pecuniary notice to declare at the appropriate time. One delegation tonight, petition, David McNeil, Peter Quillen from the Board of Health, or the Brand Health Company. Welcome. Come to the podium, somebody. And Mr. Emerson, how lucky.
Hi. So you can raise or lower the podium if you want. Mic's on. You just have to advance your slides.
Okay. Mr. Chair, Mr. Mayor, members of council, senior staff, and others. Paul Emerson, I think I know pretty well everyone, if not everyone in the room. I just wanted to introduce to you the president and CEO of the Brant Community Healthcare System, Dr. David McNeil. He's going to be making the presentation tonight. And our new board chair, and many of you probably know Peter Quinlan. He was a long time, 40-year or something, lawyer in Brantford with a senior partner with the Watrous firm. And Peter's our board chair. So I just wanted to introduce him since I know you. And I'm going to just turn it over to David for the presentation.
Great, thanks, Paul. And I know all of you have the presentation in advance, so I won't go through every slide, but I thought I would just provide some highlights of where we are with our project and as an organization. In 2020, the Brant Community Healthcare System launched its new strategic plan, and we recognized that our mission as a hospital was to work together to build a healthier community. We knew as a hospital and as a health system that we cannot actually do this work alone, and we have been working in partnership with our community since the launch of our strategic plan. And we're here with that sort of same sentiment this evening to work together with our community to build the Brant Community Healthcare System that we require to service our community. I'm not going to go through all of the details of our strategic plan. As you know, in 2022, the Ministry of Health granted us approval to redevelop the Brant Community Healthcare System. And the Brant Community Healthcare System is a two-site hospital system that serves the people of Brantford, as well as Brant County and surrounding areas. So we have this nice rendering of a new hospital that we conceptualized to be on the site, and I can probably say that the hospital will look very much different than that. Maybe just to give a highlight of where we are in the Ministry of Health planning process. The Ministry of Health has a 5-stage planning process. You can see a red little teardrop, and that shows that we are at stage 1 in the redevelopment of the Brant Community Healthcare System. Why it was significant that we got government approval in March 2022 is that we have to have permission to plan, and of course planning takes money, and government has to supply that money. So we're well into stage 1. We will be submitting our stage 1 submission to the Ministry of Health in June, and then moving on to stage 2. As you can see from this little diagram, we need government approval again between stage 3 and 4, because that's where you're starting to do very much detailed construction documents. For the emergency department, that green dot box on the top should actually be an implementation. We are actually out to tender right now for our emergency department and anticipate that to close in April of this year. What we have to do in stage 1 is basically plan all of the detailed requirements based on population projections to 2046. We've actually consulted with the master or the official plans for both Brant County and the city, and as well as Ministry of Finance population projections to ensure the facility is appropriately sized. The siting of the facility will be on both the existing site of the Brant Community Healthcare System, as well as the existing site in Paris at the Willett site. We conceptualized a lot of work being done at the Brantford site. You'll see some white boxes up there that are sort of in dotted lines. Those are the buildings that exist on the site that will be demolished and The massive orange structure is a conceptualization of the location of the new facility. At the top is St. Paul Avenue, just to get your orientation in terms of what we're looking at. This is a bit of a different rendering, but it sort of conceptualizes the connection of the new tower to the existing infrastructure at the hospital, with the buildings, that excess buildings, removed from the site. The Ministry of Health required that we retain investments in infrastructure where they had made recent investments as early as recent as 2004. Of course, the Willett site is an integral part of that redevelopment. We've been investing quite significantly in the Willett site to revamp that. It's got 52 beds there. This year we're approaching 28,000 urgent care visits. We just put in a new X-ray machine at about $750,000. So the Willett site will be an integral part of our redevelopment. I've provided some renderings within your package. One of the things that we are looking at, probably as an early site project, is the development of a dialysis unit on the Willett site. And that will be an early project that we're making submission in terms of our stage 1 submission. As I said, the emergency department is broken up into 2 projects. Project 1 is out to tender. And then once we move on into project 2, we will have a fully developed emergency department. It'll be over 2 times the size of the existing emergency department. It will take us about 36 months to get through all of that work. So where we're here today is really just to highlight the need for our community to come together and pay for all this. When we did the pre-capital submission to get government approval to plan, the initial estimates of cost based on a 445-bed facility were $1.3 billion. Based on recent population projections that have been updated since we made that submission in 2020, we're now at a 500-bed facility. So the facility is much bigger. And $1.3 billion in 2020 is probably very different than money today. So we anticipate the cost of this facility to go up fairly significantly. Ministry of Health policy is that they fund 90% of the construction of a facility. The community has to come up with 10% of its cost share of the cost of construction and the entire cost for furniture and equipment. So based on the initial estimate, we thought the community would have about $130 million of construction share in the building. The financing arrangements to do that are variable, but that would be essentially the community share. As we advance planning, and particularly as we move into stage 2 and stage 3, ministry requires some fairly strong indications from community that fundraising commitment is there, and that we can actually execute and raise that local share before they will allow for proceeding in terms of the next stages of planning. So really what our ask tonight was at council that it's always a hard ask, and coming with your hat in hand, but this is a community project. This is for the betterment of our community. We can't do this as a hospital alone. So we're asking that, in thinking forward, that we start to allocate money into a reserve account for the support of the redevelopment of the Brant Community Healthcare System. I'd be happy to answer any questions or pass it over to our chair, Peter Quinlan, or Paul Emerson, past chair, if you have anything further you would like to add. Good. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for giving us this audience this evening. Very much appreciated.
Questions from committee? Councilor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. And just a quick one, because somebody's gonna see these plans in the newspaper or on your website or whatever, and the question will come up. How do you demolition a third of the hospital and keep functioning when it's bursting at the seams now?
Yeah. So I think, as you move in through a hospital, and even in the emergency department, we have a complex transitional plan that phases the construction in such a way that we maintain the operations of the hospital and continue to progress with its redevelopment. So you have to create new space, shuffle things into that new space, and then do what you need to do with the old space. I mean, the demolition phase is the very last phase of any redevelopment project for a hospital.
Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, thanks for this, and I think everybody everybody and anybody is looking forward to a new hospital in Brantford. It's well overdue and we're bursting. We all get that. Back to you spoke that the Ministry of Health funded 90% of this, and as phase two, they look at the other 10% to say, okay, is the community backing this? Which is fine. I think it even expands beyond Brantford and Brant County and Six Nations on the Grand and all around. I guess my question here is, and I feel it will be supported, I truly believe the support is out there. Do you feel confident that, knowing that we have community support, that the Ministry of Health is going to step up, because they've got to understand that we need a new hospital here? That's the part that I'm a little leery on. Would you say you're quite confident that they're behind this project, or are they kind of behind it? I'm just looking for your gut feel here.
Well, more than a gut feeling, the ministry, the government of Ontario, publishes projects that are supported by Infrastructure Ontario. And the major projects in the province that you can think about, the Brant Community Healthcare System is listed on Infrastructure Ontario's projects, and essentially says in the planning phase. So the fact that we are listed on Infrastructure Ontario's website as a project that they're keeping their eye on provides me with a high degree of assurance that, despite the evident need for the redevelopment of this hospital, the fact that government has put it on Infrastructure Ontario's list tells me that it's a pretty sure thing that the hospital will be built. And it would require a significant change in direction for government to remove a project from Infrastructure Ontario's list. So I think that's the most definitive answer that I can give you in terms of that. The when, the how, the money that government has to come make available. I mean, all of those, I'm sure, are questions that will continue to plague us given the cost escalation that we're seeing across the province in all of these major redevelopment projects. In the last 5 years, they've just skyrocketed.
Right. No, I appreciate that response. And one follow-up, if I could, Mr. Chair. And you alluded to it. The 1.3 was in 2020. It's probably 1.6, 1.7 now. Is there a cap that the province of Ontario is going to say, we got to cap it here, or are they 90% of whatever it is at the time that this is built?
Yeah, I mean, governments have to look at what the needs are of the people of Ontario, right? And they're going to have to develop that infrastructure to support that need. How they phase the construction may be a very different question, and maybe a question that government's dealing with right now in all of these capital projects. So whether it's one big chunk, or whether they say phase this construction so that we get to where we need to go, is a possibility that we that we're contemplating in our planning right now. So we have to provide government alternatives to get them to yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any more questions? Councillor Bell. And Councillor Miller next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to David. David, thank you for this update. It looks spectacular, the drawing, and I appreciate seeing the plans. You haven't talked about time so much. You talked about money. Can you give us an indication of the timeline when we might expect to have this building complete?
So I will tell you that the planning phase is pretty much, for each planning phase, it's about a year for each one of those 5 stages of planning. So you can probably think that we wouldn't be in the ground before 5 years if we got approvals expediently from government. I would say that the soonest that you're going to see a fully completed facility is 10 years from now. We're hoping to advance projects in the interim so that we can move forward on things like we've identified, like a dialysis service within the Willett site, for example. We see that as part of the phasing of the redevelopment, because we know that need is here in the community today. So there are pieces that we would think that we can advance as part of the overall redevelopment, the emergency department being a perfect example. We know we need a new emergency department. It is advancing. It's a $25 million project based on our estimates. We will see what happens when the tenders close. So those are things that we can advance. And so you know, we're starting redevelopment right now. It's in progress. I think you can probably see that over the next 10 to 15 years, there will be redevelopment at the hospital on a constant basis.
Thank you. If I can just one follow on, Mr. Chair, if I may. Given that timeline, David, I think we're looking to give 10% from the municipalities of the total cost, and of that 10%, I guess 28% of it will come from us and 72% from the city. My simple math says that means we've got to think about $40 to $50 million over the next 10 years. Councillor Miller and I actually sat in a presentation at the Roma conference where this very issue really came forward about being prepared for the future and setting aside money. So I think as we move into our long-term financial planning activity, we need to put a line item in there which says we need to be squirreling away $4 to $5 million a year for the next 10 years so that we can pay our share of the bill in 10 years from now. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you. And or hopefully we get a huge donor coming with that.
Councillor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to David McNeil. David, I just want to say we're going to miss you. I think you've done a great job locally, so best of luck in whatever you take on in the future. I'm glad you mentioned the capital costs, because we've seen capital costs, like to see them go 40-50% over the original estimate is not uncommon. So we really look forward to that new estimate in June of this year. But you also mentioned that we have to raise the money locally for equipment and furnishings. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. That's got to be locally funded. What are the estimated costs for those two things?
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, we will have a better I don't want to throw a number out there because then it's going to be recorded. We'll have a good estimate of that at the end of stage one, because we are doing, you know, a fairly detailed list of equipment so that we can get, even at a preliminary estimate, the equipment cost. But equipment costs are extraordinary, right? We're putting in a new CT scan. It cost us $2 million. We implemented a simple X-ray machine at the Willett site this year. That's $750,000. All that came from, those two projects were entirely community funded. That came from the fundraising of our foundation, but they were entirely community fundraised. And when you're developing a new hospital, I mean, some of the equipment that you move, some equipment you can't move and you have to reinstall. And we just have to be practical and pragmatic about what we can move and what we have to absolutely buy new. So I think that will be some of the work for the future hospital administration to work through as they begin to commission the site. But I don't really want to throw a number out there.
Okay, fair enough. I want to pin you down on a number, but that's fair too. So thank you.
Any more questions? Councillor Bell did take mine, and or whatever was as good is on the timelines is how long have we got and what do we need to start salting away. Thank you. What would council like to do with this? Councillor Chambers.
Mr. Chairman, with the assistance of the staff, a resolution is proposed, and I'd like to read it. And it, I think, would meet the satisfaction of members of council. Before I do read it, I just wanted to make one comment, and that is, as I think everyone here knows, I live in the western part of the county, and I can recall, seems like not that long ago, but it's been a while, the community of Woodstock underwent a project like this several years ago, and I can well recall when they first started the idea, it just seemed unattainable. And as time went on and as the people got behind it, the community got behind it, the project, all you have to do is drive down through Woodstock and you see a beautiful, beautiful hospital. And it's the hope, I think, of our community to do the same thing. And I have no doubt that it's going to be achieved. And with that in mind, Mr. Mayor, the resolution that is prepared is this, and I'll move it. that the County of Brant establish a reserve fund for the purpose of funding its local contribution towards the Brant Community Healthcare Systems redevelopment project, and that staff be directed to report on funding for this reserve fund to meet local contribution requirements as part of a long-term financial plan to be presented to council in 2023. Seeking a seconder.
Second by Councilor Mayor Bailey. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for coming forward.
Well, no, thank you to council for supporting this. Much
Thank you.
appreciated.
Moving on. Adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Somebody want to move it? Councilor McAlpine, seconder. Councilor Kyle. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Carried. Business arising from the minutes. Seeing none. Consent items. None to be approved. None to be received. Staff reports, 8-1. There is a recommendation. Moved by Councilor Pierce, seconder. Councilor Oatley. Discussion. All quiet in the gallery? Like that. All those in favor? 8.2, municipal alcohol policy update. There is a recommendation. Somebody want to move it? Moved by Councilor McAlpine, seconder. Do I have a seconder? Councilor Oakley. Any discussion? Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So I would just like to, and it's a good report. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think, but I'm just trying to understand the point that it makes. It talks about reducing the risk for the municipalities, and I'm trying to understand because the policy that we have in place now, my understanding, has been there for quite some time. So I'm trying to pull out the little buds of how it's going to reduce the risks for us. I'm not sure.
Kathy?
I'm all in favor of that. I'm just trying to find where in here, that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. One of the big changes that we made with this is to up the liability insurance from 2 million to 5 million. Most of the other items are really, driven by the legislation and just some housekeeping items. There are quite a few different types of permits. We're just trying to get those things in order. Really, there wasn't a lot of change. Like you said, this policy's been in place for quite some time. So that's the biggest change.
Okay, follow up if I could then, Mr. Chair. Thank you. So let's just say that I want to rent out the Silaps and I've got my $5 million liability. It was to. Is there any idea of how much that's going to adjust the price?
Through you, Mr. Chair, from what we've looked at, it's somewhere, depending on the number of people attending, $50 to $100 more, approximately.
Which is not much. And one final, if I could, does it do people have to get the insurance through us, the county, or can they get their own as long as it's the 5 million?
Through you again, Mr. Chair, you can get it on your own. We offer the service as a third, as an option. However, you can bring your own as well.
As long as it's the 5. Thank you.
Any more questions? Call the question. All those in favor?
Just
Whoop, sorry.
Just a quick one. I'm assuming you removed the Memorial Hall just simply because it's no longer a municipal property. So that might just be something for clarity in case somebody was reading the report. So.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Final time. Any more questions? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8.3, implementation of standing committee. There is a recommendation. Moved by Councilor Chambers, second by Councilor Oakley. Any discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor? Notice of motion. Mr. Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would just like to give a notice of motion for the March 28th council meeting for a motion to propose that staff produce a report exploring options to record votes for public record, as currently we do not, outside of a specifically recorded vote.
Don't need a second or not? Nope. Nope, just notice. Perfect. Any discussion on that before it heads up or anything? Did be? Okay. Communications, none listed. CAO.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a couple of very quick items in terms of the CAO's update. One is just to kind of round out summarize kind of the public engagement phase of our new strategic plan update. So that went extremely well. So to all members of council who assisted in those events, I thank you. In terms of surveys completed or attendance at an event or submission of a hard copy survey, we reached about 850 people. So that's comparable to what we did last time around with the establishment of the original strategic plan. So I think that's good news. That lays the foundation for our session. We'll be scheduling that with council to consider all those findings and start to build the plan out from there. And then the second item just kind of relates to today's announcement, an exciting announcement that appointed Allison Newton as our CAO. It just gives me an opportunity, maybe my last public opportunity at one of these meetings anyway, to thank this council for letting me assist with this transition. This has been a great council to work with. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I've got a long time left to go, but I know it'll be the last one of these meetings I'm attending. So just my thanks to Mayor Bailey and this council for letting me serve in this role, and I'm happy to assist in this transition any way I can to make Allison successful. So thank you.
Well, if I can say, thank you, Daryl, for what you've done. Much appreciate it. I know you're only a phone call away and you just live up the street. So you may be called upon. Who knows? And welcome to the new CEO, Allison. Good luck. Other business. Councilor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as it states there, this is for the purchase of a camera and battery for the OPP crimes unit. If committee would allow me, I'm just going to read a couple little things here, just the kind of history behind this. This came to Police Services Board as kind of well, first of all, let me back up. The County of Brant and Oxford County OPP share street crimes unit. It's the same. They each have their own, but there's one person that oversees the street crimes unit of both detachments. It came to Police Services Board in regards to purchasing what they call an RDOC, which is a Rapid Deployment Observation Kit, is what it's called. In essence, it's a special camera they use for surveillance. The Oxford OPP detachment was looking to purchase 2 of these cameras, and they were looking at the County of Brant to purchase the battery units for the camera units, and then there would be 2 units. They would be stored in the Oxford OPP, but if the County of Brant required one for any situation, they were confident, I think was the word that was used, that one would be available for us to use at that specific time. We spoke about it as Police Services Board, and our thought was the fact that it's a great tool for the OPP to have, but we don't want to be in a situation where we need it now and it's not necessarily available because it's being used by the Oxford OPP, which that's fine, they're using it. So our suggestion was, and we discussed it around the table, and it was a unanimous decision by our police board, that we think it's a great idea, but we feel that we should own our own unit, so we have it at our disposal whenever we need it, wherever we need it, however we need it. So it was suggested that, okay, that's what we do, but as a Police Services Board, there is money in the Police Services Board, but we don't usually put that to operational costs. So the suggestion was to come to council to see if council would support Police Services Board and our OPP with the purchase of one of these camera units and the battery pack. Now, if you would just bear with me just 2 minutes, I'm just going to read a couple things here. And it talks about, it goes back to 2017. It says, in 2017, a new program by the OPP was formed that combined the OPP Organized Crime Enforcement Bureau and the drug action teams. It was combined to be called what they call a CSCU, which is a Community Street Crimes Unit. And more or less, there's 184 members of the Community Street Crime Unit assigned to 23 investigation units across the five regions within the OPP. So what they do, as far as the Brant Community Street Crime Unit, in essence, they're responsible for the recovery and property of illegal drugs, controversially estimated to be more than $1 million. Brant and Oxford Brant and Oxford Community Street Crime Unit has participated in many initiatives targeting known and prolific offenders who operate in stolen goods. During these investigations, historically, it's been surveillance by the officers themselves, which unfortunately puts them in harm's way sometimes in places they don't really want to be, or the old adage, their cover is blown, so these people see them there. So with these units, they can be deployed. They don't have to be manned. They can be deployed anywhere at any time. These battery packs that come with the units, they work through the cold. So if it's inclement weather, cold weather, it doesn't matter. These units can still power these things. There was the one everybody will remember there was an investigation where the Brant Street Crimes Unit in August of 2022, where we seized approximately $200,000 worth of stolen property. That was assisted by a camera that we were able to use off another region. So they've used the camera. It's been used in other jurisdictions. It definitely helps, and it keeps our officers out of harm's way, and it allows a tactical surveillance for these things to be done. Again, there's more information on these cameras. Again, they're called RDOC cameras. The camera unit itself is worth about $5,000, and then the battery packs are around $2,000 a piece. What the Police Services Board and the OPP are requesting, again, it's totally up to council. The possibility of supporting to buy 2 of the battery packs and 1 camera. That way, they always have a spare there if it's required. So again, I'm bringing this to council to look for support around this table here to support in the purchase of a camera and the 2 battery packs for our OPP. If there's any questions, I can answer them. And if there's any further questions that I can't answer, then the superintendent has agreed to come into council meeting at the end of the month if there's more questions that we have that I can't answer.
Questions for Councillor Pearson? Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Pierce. I support the idea of our police force having their own tool for this. My question is, I wasn't clear. Is the idea that the funds that we show support for the funds to come from the Police Service Board piggy bank or from the municipal budget, basically? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Howes, it would be from council. It would not come out of the Police Service Board funds because those funds are not to be used for operational expenses.
Any more questions? Councillor, Mr. Mayor.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if you're going to call a vote, I have to declare a conflict. I was part of the process to bring it to council.
No problem. Councillor Chambers. Proposal. Second for Councillor Oakley. Now it's on the table. Discussion. Gallery's quiet. You could declare a conflict, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can we just make note that it was unanimous?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. Councillor Bell. New business.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to talk for a few minutes about the recent revision of the boundaries for elementary schools in Paris. Some of you may know that the Grand Area District School Board has gone through a process, I think, across all of its territory of reviewing the boundaries. More specifically to Paris, there has been a change, I think now agreed, that some children that currently go to Cobblestone School will now have to go to Central School. So they'll have to make a change of school. What I want to raise, I think, in this forum, and it's a policy issue, I think, is that we really weren't involved in the consideration of the issues that stem from the change of schools for these children. I've been approached by many parents, and Councillor Pearce equally has been approached by many parents who feel that the walk that their children will now have to make to school from the south end of Paris down to Central will be a difficult one, a challenging one, and it may call on us to have to put in place more crossing guards, and it may cause us to have to look at the junction of Dumfries Street and Grand River Street North, Grand River Street South more carefully. There are 2 or 3 places, if you're coming from the southern end of Dumfries Street down to Central School, there are some fairly difficult crossings you have to make. If you have children who are not accompanied by parents, that is really quite a challenge for them. So I'd like to make sure that we're looking at that. I do believe that our roads department and the bylaw team are looking at additional crossing guards. But I think to generalize it, I felt a little disappointed that the school board didn't ask us or involve us more in making these decisions. And you know, we listened earlier to a conversation about not getting surprises, and I felt surprised by this. And we are having to react to a problem that's actually been effectively created by the school board that we're now having to resolve. And I would appreciate the views of others, but I really would like, if we can, to pass a motion that our staff, that we as the county are involved in all changes of school boundaries so that we can deal with the non-educational parts of the changes that come about. And I'd look for a seconder for that motion.
Second by Councillor Pearce. Now there's a motion on the floor, discussion. Councillor Pearce. Councillor Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, yeah, there's a lot of angry parents out there right now, and the one parent that I spoke with, to what Councillor Bell was saying there, in regards to us as a municipality, even knowing this was going on, the one parent that I spoke with had suggested to the school board, does our council, does our municipality know about this? And the response to them was the fact that it's not their responsibility to tell us what's happening with their schools, which is quite unfortunate of a response. Again, I think most of the parents that I've spoken with, they understand the fact that there's got to be some shifting around. But to Councillor Bell's point, they're very concerned with having to cross over a major highway, and then the triangle corner of Dumfries, Grand River South, Grand River North, as well as the fact that there's a couple of them, my understanding, that are 1.4 kilometers away, and busing you need to be 1.6 kilometers away. So you could potentially have somebody at the end of the block getting a bus, and then somebody in mid block does not get the bus. So it's a very difficult situation. As I spoke to the delegation earlier on with MPAC, if they have any say with the school boards, they don't. It doesn't appear that we do. But again, it's quite unfortunate that we weren't even made aware of it. To Councillor Bell's point, I found out about it one day. My phone blew up and my email blew up. That's the only way I knew about it, and that's caught us off guard. So we're looking kind of silly about the whole thing. So whatever we can do, I'm in full support.
Mr. Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with Councillor Bell's motion on this one. The boundary review that's in question is all of North Brant, so it also includes the school that my kids go to, as well as the high school here in Paris. And I think they're further to the safety concerns. There are other concerns, some of which I spoke with Cindy and her team about last week with respect to the after-school program, for example. There's kids who are currently at Paris Central for after school and are now being sent to Glen Morris. So they're not even being shifted from one school in town to another school in town. They're being brought from the Cobblestone area out to Glen Morris, which is fine. We're welcoming school out there. We're happy to have some more kids at our little school, but the after-school program that's there currently that the county does do a good job of is very small and doesn't necessarily have the space to accommodate. So I'm 100% on board. I think if we could find a way to get the school board into the room with us so that we could all be on the same page. Interestingly, the folks that were here talking about the hospital, they talked about the Ministry of Health using the official plan and the population projections. I don't know which population projections the school boards are using and the Ministry of Education, but they seem to have kind of a backwards approach to things. They seem to be waiting to have everything implode before they do everything, which is what has resulted in this boundary review, because in order for them to build a school, they have to show that they've used all of the spaces at the schools they have available to them, which has now meant that kids are having to be shuffled around so that they can show the Ministry of Education, oh, by the way, yeah, we are full. So now we need a new school, rather than pre-planning ahead and saying we've got all of these houses being built. So now we're, again, playing catch up, and when we're not in the room for those conversations with them, it's pretty hard to get on the same page. So 100% in agreement with Councillor Bell's motion. I think there's more things to discuss with them than even just the safety.
Any more discussion on the motion? Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question. I'd like to know what the motion looks like in practice, and I'd like to hear the motion again. Keeping in mind, we have a lot on our plate as a municipality. School boards do have elected officials. They're called school trustees. And I understand where the motion's coming from, but I would like to know what it looks like, what it involves.
Thank you.
And if you could read it again, I'd appreciate that too.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll probably use different words, but I'll try. I want to ensure that the county council and county staff are fully involved in changes that are being made by the school board, whether it's the Grand Erie District School Board or the Catholic School Board. And it's not so much the educational issues, it's the peripheral issues, the knock-on issues that the school board simply doesn't appear to be caring about. And Councillor Kyle mentioned some, Councillor Pearce has mentioned some. I think it comes down to communication and collaboration between ourselves and the school board, which doesn't seem to exist on anything other than a numerical level.
I'm going to ask the clerk, did you get that?
I think we have the intent of that motion.
We have the intent. Can you,
Good.
Could you read it back a little bit to the intent so everybody is understanding of it?
That the County of Brant is involved in all changes with the school boundaries. You want to ensure that the county council and county staff are fully involved in changes made by the school boards and involved in the changes with the school boundaries.
Did you get that, Councillor Bell?
Yeah, it's close enough. I think it needs to be, it comes down to collaboration. And if somebody wants to fine tune the wording, I'm more than comfortable with that.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Just if I could, through the chair, to Councillor Bell, in your last comment, you said fully informed or fully involved. Just to clarify the intent of that.
I would say it's fully involved, because a lot of the things that have spun out of this, we weren't aware of, and we're now having to pick up the pieces from.
Mr. Mayor.
Just something else, Mr. Chair, that I'm concerned about is that kids will be kids. And I think that over the time period of going to school, they're going to find that it's quicker to go down the hill through the park and over the bridge than to stay on the roads. And I find there's an element of risk there too. Not that our parks aren't safe, but I mean it's a steep hill and it's a park, and you know we're doing everything we can do to keep the trees up. So we want it to be wooded, and we want it to be a park, and we have to cross the bridge, so you have to go across the river, so you have to go over that little bridge. And I think over time, people are going to find that that's a faster way to go to Central School. And I think there's an element of risk there too, that if anything happens to those kids going, for a shorter route to school, I think that's really looks bad on us. Not that maybe it would be our fault, but it would be tragic if anything happened.
Thank you. Councillor Bell again.
Yeah, just to emphasise what the mayor has just said, we redeveloped Laurel Street in part to overcome some issues that senior school students had in accessing or getting safely down to the high school from the south end of Paris. Here we're talking about children potentially under the age of 10, coming from the Dumfries Street area, the Washington Street area. They certainly will not walk up the hill and then down Laurel Street. They're going to come the shorter route. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to make sure that that routing is safe.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One final comment, if I could, and just for everybody's awareness, it goes as far down as Kathleen Street. Pardon me, Catherine Street. It goes right down to the Lions Park, Optimus Park, and then up there. That's so anything north of that, they're shifting over. And just for a little bit of context, when Cobblestone was built there, at the time Cobblestone was built, my son Matthew was the first year in there was grade 8. They had 5 empty classrooms, and I recall the people being there from the Grand Area District School Board thinking, this is great, we got all kinds of room here. Well, at that point in time, the only thing that was on the radar for building in Paris, in the county, was Cobblestone. I don't even think none of the other stuff would have even been on the map. But we keep telling them as council that we're growing and they've got to see it. But at that time, there was also a suggestion that once Cobblestone did build out, that they would actually take people all the way from the south end and move them down to Central. So I don't think that the movement of students by the board is complete. So I think we need to Councillor Bell's point here is, interject ourselves as much as we can and at least be on a discussion basis back and forth so we're not broadsided.
Thank you. Councillor Chambers.
I was just going to mention, and I don't know the procedure, how they do their boundary adjustments, but I do know when they have accommodation studies that committees are struck and people are put on committees. I'm not sure whether the boundary adjustment is carried out by a committee or whether it's a staff generated report. And I think Councillor Kyle knows the answer, but if it is a staff generated report, then that's a little bit difficult to get into there. But if it's a committee, then we can ask for an appointment to a committee to be on that.
Councillor Kyle, you want to enlighten us?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So it's a bit of both. So I think the process is started by way of some sort of report from the staff, but then there's a committee struck much the way they do the accommodation review studies. So I know that there was a member from the parent council from each of the schools that are involved. I believe the principals were also from each of those schools involved, and there were some public meetings, but interestingly, I'm not sure if the county would have been invited to those. I was as a parent, so I was there as Jen Kyle, mom of 2 kids that are at one of the affected schools. But the unfortunate part is they're already through the process. They've had all of the public meetings, they've had all of the committee meetings, and now they've come to the decision, which was altered slightly from what they originally presented. There's lots of other things too, like right now, currently the French immersion kids for grade 6, 7, and 8 in the county go to Paris Central. They're now being shifted back to Burford where they started. They've only been at Paris Central for about maybe 3 years, because I was on that ARC review when that happened. My kids were at French immersion. So it is definitely a process that I asked as covertly as I could during some of the public meetings about sort of what that process was, trying to understand, because the other thing that really wasn't taken into consideration, even though they were part of it, was the high school. So the high school as of September is at 95% capacity as well, and no plans for a new school. That school hasn't been touched in years and years and years. Interestingly, at the Roma conference, I did happen to have breakfast with the president of the Ontario Public School Board Association, just kind of by chance, and she's very much in favor of trying to get councils, municipal councils, and school boards in the same room So maybe it's worth reaching out and, via our trustees or whoever that process might be to see whether or not we could have a more collaborative relationship with them. Somehow, somewhere, something has been lost, and it's certainly going to have a big effect on the kids.
Thank you. Any more discussion? Good discussion. Councilor Miller, sorry. Go ahead.
Just again, touching on what Councilor Chambers said, I was going to bring this up. I don't think this was done in isolation and closed session. I think it was open to the public. I know we make a lot of decisions around this table, and it affects people. People are surprised. So how did this happen? It's just those that it's just tough to get the word out, as we know. Sometimes it happens. So, you're asking us to get involved. You're asking us to get I don't know whether that's at staff level or council level, and as Councillor Kyle says, well, we need better communication between the school board and the council. Just, I should point out, school boards have extended invitations to us in the past. I don't know if they do it once every council or once a year for one of their meetings. And as far as I know, not too many people have taken them up on it. So I think, having said that, I think lines of communication could certainly be better. Having found out, they were having some issues with looking for a new location for a school, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't all our staff that were to blame for that one. And again, it goes back to that communication. So I guess my only issue with this is that word involved, because I know at some point we do get involved, whether it's at the planning level or whether it's at the staff level, looking at to see if we need more school crossing guards. So I guess that's my only issue again is what does that look like? Is that in keep in mind we can only ask them. They are not beholden to us. They can do whatever they want. But are we asking just for more communication to let us know what's going on, or having said that, part of the onus lies on us to get involved sometimes to find out what is going on there. But how do you see that? Do you see it at the staff level, at the council level? Like I said, I'd like to see what I'd like to understand what you're trying to achieve that isn't already available to us.
Councilor Bell, last time.
Yeah, just to follow, I think Councillor Miller's asking very good questions, which I don't have all the answers. But I do recall when this first came up to my attention, I asked the question of staff, and I was told that the only connection between the school board and our staff was planning, and that was all about numbers of people. It wasn't about the consequential issues of moving children around that were just ignored, not even thought about. And that's where I think involvement is really a key part, because some things that they may have thought the numbers support practically may not be possible, or from a safety perspective may not be desirable. And so I think it is an involvement, and I think it will be at a staff level. And if staff can't resolve it, then I think it comes back to council, and then council has to talk to their equivalents in the school board.
Last time. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried. I think it was unanimous, Councilor Belt.
Thank you.
No other business. Motion to go in camera. Moved by Councilor House, second by Councilor Oakley. All those in favor? Councilor Miller.
Just and our procedural bylaw is always a little bit slack on this, and that is when we go in camera, we say move to go in camera and all in favor. But what actually are we doing in terms of who goes in camera? The minutes say that the last time we went in camera, that the Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee convened in camera to discuss the article on the, so the Policy Development and Strategic, thank God we've changed that. The committee convenes in camera. So does that mean that senior staff have to all leave? Or does that mean senior staff all get to stay? Or does that mean we should say in the resolution that the committee convene in camera with senior staff or some senior staff? Or who makes that decision? Who makes that call? I didn't see any of them jump up to leave, but technically the motion isn't inclusive of them, even though Allison is presenting a report. So my point is we have to be more specific about who goes in camera, who decides who goes in camera, and the resolution should reflect it accordingly. So I think the motion that I heard was that the Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee convene in camera with senior staff to discuss whatever the hell we're discussing, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board.
You're correct. Darrell?
And just to conclude, who does make that decision?
And certainly through the chair, in terms of, if the question is which staff remain for an in-camera meeting of council, that's typically being at the, either the direction, whoever the CAO that feels need to be in the room for that discussion. If council's uncomfortable with someone as part of that discussion, they would usually suggest that. I wouldn't want to see the resolution speak to specific individuals who would have to be in attendance. I think that's generally been at the call of the CAO, but I think the reference to senior staff in your motion provides for that. But I would rather not be in a position of having to identify matter by matter which individual staff are going to be in the room. But if council would leave that to me, and in future, Allison, in terms of determining who is appropriate to be in the room.
I know it's well looked after at council because we read the motion, but at the committee level, we just in camera, there we go. So maybe we need to be a little bit more specific on that and take the advice of the CAO on who should be in camera, and then we're all set.
So I'm going to start over again, Councilor Chambers. I'm going to ask somebody to move in camera and read the motion that's in front of them. How's that? Who was that?
Oh, he did the original one. I don't know if you want to.
Councilor House. Put you on the spot.
Oh,
No,
we
it's
didn't
on
do
the white
the yellow
page.
page, sorry.
Right here.
It's just that the Policy Development and Strategic Direction Committee convene in camera with senior staff to discuss.
Thank you. And I'm going to throw in the word appropriate senior staff.
Okay.
To help out.
Perfect. A seconder again. Councilor Open. Call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. We're now in camera. Those that need Gary. If there's nothing else, move for adjournment. Thank you.